Thank you, Shireen. Powerful words, and it is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do just that, and it's one that we need to take up. I might just ask a follow-up question to our Indigenous panel members. From your perspective, what the connection is between, and you've spoken about it to some extent already, but is there anything else that you want to say about the connection between the voice and self-determination?
Self-determination. Do you want to go first?
It's self-determination over our own voice. I think one of the great problems that we have as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is that because all of those representative bodies have been silenced before, and we don't have one, right, is that anybody can put up their hand and say that they speak on our behalf. Political parties can choose who speak on our behalf, you know, as we are seeing in the case against this, you know, coming from the opposition. They've got a rare, you know, there's so few Indigenous people that are against this, yet, you know, can say we don't need this voice. You know, a person that is chosen by a political party, we should be able to choose who speaks on our behalf about those policies that are made about us, and we should be able to hold those people to account, you know, when they do speak for us, and that's self-determination over our own voice.
So when I think about self-determination as it relates to Indigenous people, I think about it in two ways. So there's the way that it applies to all people, which is, you know, essentially self-determination over our own physical body and mind and spirit and whatever else that might be. You know, that's human rights. And then under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, there's a different type of self-determination that's recognised, which applies to peoples in the same way that it applies to nations. And we can see from the map that Thomas showed us that First Nations peoples in Australia were and are distinct political and social groups that we have our own laws that govern the way that we live and the way that we want to live. And that type of self-determination is less about how we live in the day-to-day world and more about how we interact with the state. So if we are considered, as we are under international law, as distinct political peoples, then we have a right to have a say about how the Australian nation governs over us. And so it's sort of like we're a state within a state, or many hundreds of states within the Australian state.
Thank you. I don't know whether the next question is for Shireen or Thomas, but maybe both of you. And I know you're not scared of hard questions. I don't want to give too much airtime to the No campaign, but I also think it's good for us to understand what that's about so that we can be equipped to deal with any of those arguments. So the official No pamphlet starts by saying that the voice is the biggest change ever made to the Australian Constitution, and that it's risky and it's permanent. And then there's other parts, different parts of the No campaign that say that the problem with the voice is that it's not powerful enough because it's only an advisory function, and it makes it easy for government to just say, well, thanks for that, but we'll just continue on and business as usual and not actually listen. Does any of that worry you?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that on further to the right, you know, you've got advocates, no advocates saying, oh, this is too radical, you know, this is going to destroy the Constitution. But then further to the left, you've got the Lydia Thorpe saying this is not enough, you know. So at the extremes, this is not enough or this is too much. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that this is a pragmatic, sensible, middle ground proposal. And in terms of, is it safe, constitutionally safe? One of the biggest advocates for this change, and one of the co-conceivers of the proposal, is one of your brethren, Julian Leeser, in the Liberal Party. Now, he's been a supporter of a voice, an advisory body guaranteed by the Constitution for something like 8-9 years, and helped conceive of the concept. And if you recall, before he got into Parliament, he was the convener of the Samuel Griffith Society. Now, Samuel Griffith was one of the original founders of the Constitution, and the Samuel Griffith Society are a bunch of hardcore constitutional upholders, right? They love the Constitution. Julian, in his maiden speech, he said that on his 10th birthday, he asked for a copy of the Constitution. Now, I imagine Julian going to bed every night with the Constitution under his pillow, having nightmares about unelected judges and how they might, Julian has run all the no cases in the past against a republic, against a Bill of Rights, but on this, he helped conceive of the idea of a constitutionally guaranteed Indigenous body together with Indigenous leaders, and he described it in 2016. He wrote an essay where he said, this is the kind of clause that Griffith and Barton would have drafted had they turned their minds to it. So this is a truly constitutionally conservative proposal. It's the only constitutionally conservative proposal for Indigenous recognition, and it's extraordinary. That's how pragmatic Indigenous people were in adopting that modest yet profound proposal for a voice in their affairs. And it's conservative because it fits with the Constitution, right? As Julian would explain to you, the Constitution's not the place for symbolic, flowery words. So Julian and other constitutional conservatives oppose a preamble because they worry how the High Court would utilise and misuse those words and use it to reinterpret the whole Constitution. This is not that. This is a practical, pragmatic amendment, just like the rest of the practical, pragmatic rule book Constitution. What did I say that the Constitution does? It tells Parliament to set up institutions. That's what this is. It tells Parliament to set up a First Nations voice to give advice to government and Parliament on laws and policies made about Indigenous affairs. And even the concept of a voice is a conservative concept that fits with the philosophy of the Constitution. Because think about it, when the colonies came together in 1901, they guaranteed each of those colonies an equal voice in the system. That's why in our federal system, Tasmania gets an equal number of senators as New South Wales, despite the population disparity. Because our constitutional compact is founded in the idea that those historic political communities deserve a fair say, an equal say in their affairs, even the very small historic political communities. Well, there's more Indigenous Australians in this country than Tasmanians, But because they weren't included in those discussions, they were not recognised and they were not given a voice in the Constitution. They are the most ancient political community in this country. So this referendum is about fixing that and doing it in a conservative, pragmatic way that will make a real difference to Indigenous people's lives, but that it also upholds the Constitution and respects the supremacy of Parliament, because it keeps Parliament in charge of the operation of the voice.
And there's I just want to add, check out Julian Leeser's speech in the debate about the alteration bill that takes us here. He said of all the scaremongering that's going on, he said that's just completely untrue. Indigenous people are going to be focusing on things like health and education and employment, all those things that are important to our communities. And just on the things that you talked about in the pamphlet, compare those contradictions to our very clear, proposal here. What we're saying is recognition and giving people a say. That's it. You know, it's such a big difference here. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. Yeah, thanks.
So the responsibility for this referendum is with all of us, all people who can vote in it. So, and this is a question that I would love all of our panel members to answer in turn. What needs to happen between now and the referendum to secure a yes vote? And how can we in this room contribute to better conversations about the voice with the people around us?
So this goes a bit to your previous question as well, which is, so I'm friends with, and I went to uni with, a lot of people who are on the left who say no, vote no, and their reasoning is not sound. But my take is it's okay for us to disagree, and I think you've got to be strategic about how you engage with people. There are some people, I think a minority of people, who you're never going to convince. You just have to, I think a lot of the time you just have to listen. If you want to maintain a relationship with them, just take the time to listen to their concerns, because often what they're talking about has nothing to do with the referendum or the voice to Parliament or anything. It's actually a way for them to vent their own underlying issues if they're on the extremes of the no. But there are a lot of people in the community who might be a soft no or a soft yes. I sort of call them the persuadables. And these are people who simply don't know much about it. They might have heard of it. They're like, oh yeah, that's something. What is that? It's something about a voice in a third, part of the Parliament or something. They're just a bit confused. So if you can take the time to explain what it is and why it's important to you, if you can have even 5 conversations with people, and they might feel quite repetitive, but it's really great to. I've had a lot of conversations with people where they start out like basically on the fence, and then as soon as you explain it, they think, oh, this is great, and they're kind of excited to vote. So yeah, just have a nice conversation. That's my tip.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we should be confident and optimistic, but we cannot afford to be complacent at all. So I would just really urge you all to do everything you can. Think creatively. Think about how you can get out there. What can you do to persuade undecided voters to vote yes? What can you do in your communities? What can you do beyond your communities? What can you hold community events? Engaging people who might not have turned their minds to this. How can you engage Year 12 students who might be voting, who might not have thought about this before? I keep raising that idea because I wonder about the Year 12s. Because we don't watch the news anymore at night, that kind of thing. Is there a Zoom we can do for all Year 12s? Ideas like that. Think creatively and do everything you can. Talk to your work colleagues, talk to your family members, talk to everybody, and be brave about busting the myths, okay? There's information out there to assist you with some of the myth busting, and be brave and when you hear someone talking rubbish, just politely and respectfully say, no, that's not wrong, these are the facts. That's not right, these are the facts. Do that. The other thing is resources. So the campaign will need resources. If you know people who might want to donate, please encourage them to do that. But conversations, be active, be creative. This will get over the line, I think, only if all of us, every single person in this room, does everything we really can. This has got to be a mammoth effort. We've only got 3 months. 3 months around about we've got. So let's give this everything we can and let's have a yes vote.
Yeah, 3 months, that's like 12 weeks. This is urgent. It's really urgent. I just, for donations and to volunteer, yes23.com.au, but I'm only going to say, Hannah is going to talk in a moment, about Kol Halev. Get behind this campaign in your community. And as Shireen said, do everything that you can to help out. Thanks.
Thank you, and I think that is a good note to end on. And I want to thank the panel for their time and the enormous amount of emotional and intellectual energy that goes into this campaign, which is aimed at creating a nation for all of us that is more equitable and more fair. In Hebrew, Kol Halev can mean two things. Kol Halev means the voice of the heart, so echoing Uluru. And it can also mean the whole heart, like wholehearted. And may we in the room take what comes from the heart into our heart and be wholehearted in the next 12 weeks to get us as a nation where we need to go. I'd like to close our panel by asking Thomas to recite for us the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law from time immemorial, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion, the ancestral tie between a land or Mother Nature and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom, remain attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished, and it coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise, that a peoples possessed the land for 60 millennia and this sacred link should disappear from world history in merely the last 200 years? With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionately, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alien from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish, they will walk in two worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to vote yes with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ian Jankelovitz and I'm a board member of Stand Up. On behalf of Stand Up, our Sydney and national partners, I'm really honoured to be walking and talking alongside this panel of incredible speakers with the Sydney Jewish community that I grew up in. I was really struck by something Ruby said tonight, that 3 to 3.5% of the population in Australia is Aboriginal. And as Thomas said, there's been multiple attempts for a voice from the Indigenous community that have failed. The current proposition, or the current proposal, is about a partnership between all Australian people and our opportunity to make history together. That's fully enshrined in our Constitution. The First Nations community cannot do it alone, and we all have a role to play. We all have the power to influence the people around us, and we have the power to share these messages that most resonated with us tonight. We all have the power to encourage others to listen more broadly and with an open heart. To our guest speakers tonight, Thomas, Shireen and Ruby, and also Mel, our wonderful moderator, and my cousin that I jumped in a car with maybe 20 years ago to experience this country and understand what this all means. Thank you for the effort and sensitivity and patience it takes to share your voices. We know that you have all been working on First Nations justice now for decades, and we really, really applaud your efforts and hope to continue being allies to you and your communities for decades to come. Please accept a small token of thank you, of thanks and appreciation, and everyone please join me in one more big round of applause.
Thanks, Ian. So we have now heard from these three amazing voices and also about the Jewish imperative from Mel. It's now time for all of us to act. As Shireen said, this might actually be our only chance to give back to First Nations for the land and the prosperity and the opportunity that we have living in Australia. So with our final few minutes, I would like to quickly share some ways that you and your communities can get further involved in Kol Halev. Firstly, for any communal organisations, shuls, aged care homes, schools, youth movements, any other Jewish roof bodies and network organisations, we would love to talk about our options for running conversations around the voice directly with your congregants, your members and other stakeholders, those that aren't in the room tonight. We know that different events suit different communal organisations, and we want to offer the opportunity for all community members to engage with the issues around the voice within the safety and comfort of your own networks. Please, please come and chat to me after the event or shoot us an email. It's up on the screen now. We're also really happy to have +61J here at a table in the room outside. Please go and hear about their amazing Shabbat table talks and support them where you can. So that's essentially phase one of our engagement activities being implemented through Kol Halev. It's our community organising phase. Then, as we approach the referendum date later in the year, maybe only a mere 12 weeks away, phase two of the campaign kicks in, where we will mobilise, hopefully all of you, our growing group of Jewish volunteers and people keen to do more, with their own voice towards Yes 23 activities, the official campaign for Yes. Not just any activities though, activities that we know and they know will shift the dial. Conversations between family and friends and conversations that you might be able to have in door knocking and telephone call efforts. We know that conversations with the right people at the right time can change a vote. Conversations, I've found personally, really do cut through. Please sign up via the link here, up on the screen, to stay involved and play your role. You can all pull out your phones and scan away. We're also a campaign supported entirely by our community's generosity, so please consider donating to the campaign to build up our resources in order to run events like tonight and other conversations directly within the community and our communal organisations. So, this is nearly the end of the event, but it's just the start of our Kol Halev journey. And I hope to see many of you over the course of the next few months, using your voice and your influence to support this important step towards reconciliation and First Nations justice. Ruby spoke to that feeling that she can only imagine on the day after the referendum, and it made me think of something that Professor Marcia Langton asked us at our Melbourne launch a couple of weeks ago. She asked, how will you feel the morning after the referendum? Will you know that you've done all that you could, or will you be left thinking, I could have done more? On that note, please stick around after the event to purchase some books. There's the table out the back that are on sale, and have Thomas or Shireen sign one of them if you would like. Our guest speakers have all very generously offered to stick around for the next half hour or so if you do have any last questions you'd like to raise with them. Otherwise, one final thank you to our wonderful panel, and thank you to all of you, our wonderful Sydney Jewish community.